Welcome to Heartline Stories. Today's story follows Sophie, a young woman who adopted an abandoned baby and never expected her life to change so drastically. Years later, a millionaire knocks on her door with an offer that could change everything. What happens next will leave you speechless. Can Sophie take a chance on her future, or will she stay in the life she's always known? Let us know where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Stay tuned for a story that proves dreams really can come true. Once upon a time in a small town, there was a kind woman named Beth. Beth lived in a cozy little house and worked as a nurse at the local hospital. She had always wanted a family but never had children of her own. One rainy night, while walking home from work, Beth found a small abandoned baby on her doorstep. The baby was wrapped in a soft blanket, crying softly. Beth's heart melted. Without thinking twice, she picked up the baby and brought it inside. She named the baby Sophie, as she felt it was a special name for a special little girl. Beth knew she had to take care of Sophie, so she adopted her and raised her as her own. Years passed by and Sophie grew into a happy, smart, and caring girl. She loved helping her mom around the house, playing with her friends, and excelling at school. Even though Beth didn't have much money, she gave Sophie all the love and attention she could. One day when Sophie was 10 years old, something amazing happened. It was a regular Tuesday morning, and Beth was getting ready for work when there was a knock at the door. Beth opened the door and saw a well-dressed man standing there with a suitcase in his hand. "Good morning. Is this the home of Ms. Beth Harper?" he asked politely. Beth nodded, wondering who this man could be. "My name is David Lawson, and I'm the CEO of Lawson Enterprises. I have something very important to discuss with you," he said, looking a bit serious but also friendly. Beth was confused. She had no idea who he was or why he was standing at her door. "Can I help you?" she asked. David smiled and said, "I'm here because of your daughter, Sophie." Beth's heart skipped a beat. Sophie was at school, so what did this man want with her? She invited him inside and they sat down at the kitchen table. David explained, "I know this may seem strange, but I have been looking for Sophie for a very long time. You see, she is my biological daughter." Beth's eyes widened in shock. How could this man be Sophie's father? Sophie had never mentioned anything about her real parents. David continued, "I know this is a lot to take in, but I want to tell you the whole story." David shared that he had been a very successful businessman and had gotten into some trouble many years ago. His company had been going through tough times, and he had made some bad decisions. One day he had been involved in a terrible accident, and when he woke up, he found out that his wife had passed away. David was left heartbroken and lost. In the months that followed, David had found out that he had a daughter, Sophie, but he never knew where she was. When he tried to find her, he was told that Sophie had been abandoned at a hospital and was later adopted by Beth. Beth listened carefully, still trying to process everything David was saying. It was hard to believe that Sophie had a father who was a millionaire, but David's story seemed sincere. David continued, "I've been trying to find Sophie for years because I want to be part of her life. I've watched her grow up from a distance, and I'm proud of the young girl she has become. I'm asking for your permission to meet her." Beth's heart was racing. This was not what she had expected when she opened the door that morning. "What do you want from Sophie?" "Why now?" Beth asked, her voice shaking. David paused for a moment before answering. "I want to make up for the years I missed. I want to provide for her, give her the life she deserves, and make sure she has everything she needs. I would also like to offer Sophie and you a life-changing opportunity." Beth felt a whirlwind of emotions. She loved Sophie with all her heart, and she had always done her best to give her a good life. But now there was a man offering them something even bigger than they could have imagined. What was David's plan? Would Sophie be happy with all of this? Would she even want to meet her biological father? David smiled warmly and added, "I understand if this is overwhelming. Take your time to think it over. But I want you to know that I have great intentions for Sophie's future." Beth looked at David, her mind spinning. Sophie was her daughter, and she had raised her with love and care. Would she let this man, this stranger, come into their lives and change everything? What was the right thing to do? Beth sat quietly for a moment, taking in David's words. She looked at him carefully, studying his face for any hint of deceit, but all she saw was sincerity. But even with his kind words, Beth couldn't shake the feeling of protectiveness she had for Sophie. Sophie had been her world for so many years, and now suddenly, there was a man claiming to be her father. I, I need to talk to Sophie first, Beth said softly. She needed time to think, and she needed to hear Sophie's thoughts on all this. The idea of suddenly learning that her real father was a billionaire was so overwhelming for both of them. David nodded in understanding. Of course, take all the time you need. I don't want to push you, but I'll be here if you decide to meet. Beth thanked him and promised to contact him later. As he left, Beth's mind was racing with questions. What would Sophie say? How would she feel? Was David telling the truth? When Sophie came home from school that afternoon, Beth could see that she had something on her mind. She had been unusually quiet. Mom, what's wrong? Sophie asked, noticing that her mom was acting differently. Beth smiled gently, trying to hide her nervousness. Sophie, I need to talk to you about something important. There's a man who came to see me today. Sophie looked curious but also a little concerned. Who is he? He says he's your real father, Beth said slowly, watching for any sign of reaction from Sophie. Sophie's eyes widened in shock. My real father? But I don't even know him. How can he be my real father? Beth explained what David had told her about the accident, how he had been looking for Sophie all these years, and how he wanted to meet her. Sophie's eyes filled with confusion. But why now? Why hasn't he tried to find me sooner? I've grown up with you, Mom. You've always been my family. Beth held Sophie's hands gently. I know, sweetheart. You've always been my daughter. Nothing will change that. But this is something we need to figure out together. Sophie sat quietly for a moment, processing everything. Then she looked at her mom with determination. I don't know what to think about all this, Mom, but I trust you. Whatever you decide, I'll be okay with it. I just want to understand who I am, and if this man really is my father, then maybe it's important to at least meet him. Beth sighed with relief. She was grateful that Sophie was open to the idea, but she was still scared. What would happen if Sophie got attached to David? Would Sophie feel like she had to choose between them? Beth didn't want to lose the daughter she had raised with so much love. Are you sure, sweetheart? Beth asked softly, looking into Sophie's eyes. This could change everything. Sophie nodded. I'm sure. Let's just meet him. But I want to do it together as a family. It might be scary, but we'll face it together. Beth smiled, her heart swelling with love and pride for her brave little girl. She knew this was a big step, but Sophie was strong, and Beth would support her no matter what. The next day, Beth and Sophie arranged to meet David at a nearby park. They didn't know what to expect, but they agreed that it was better to face the unknown together. As they drove to the park, Beth's mind raced with questions. How would Sophie react when she met David? Would they be able to form a relationship, or would it cause more problems than it solved? When they arrived, David was already waiting by a fountain, dressed in a sharp suit. He looked nervous too, standing with his hands in his pockets. His eyes brightened when he saw them. Sophie, Beth, thank you for coming, David said, his voice full of gratitude. I know this isn't easy, but I'm so happy we can finally meet. Beth and Sophie walked up to him slowly. Sophie looked up at her mom, and Beth gave her a reassuring smile. They were in this together no matter what. David knelt down to Sophie's level, his eyes kind. I know I've missed so many years of your life, but I'm hoping we can get to know each other. I want to be part of your future. Sophie, although nervous, nodded. I guess we can start with getting to know each other, but I don't know what that will look like. David smiled warmly. I understand. We'll take it slow. Whatever you want. As they sat down by the fountain, David began telling Sophie more about his life, his company, the mistakes he had made in the past, and how much he regretted not being there for her sooner. He promised Sophie that he didn't want to disrupt her life, but wanted to offer her opportunities he never could. Beth listened quietly, watching Sophie's reactions carefully. She wasn't sure if this would work out, but she knew they needed to give it a chance. After all, they had nothing to lose. Sophie sat quietly, processing everything David had shared. It was a lot to take in. She had never imagined that her life could be turned upside down in a moment, But now she found herself in a situation she couldn't have predicted. David was clearly sincere, and his words had a kind and genuine tone. But how could she trust him after all these years of not being there? Beth noticed Sophie's silence and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "It's okay to feel overwhelmed," she whispered. "This is a big change for both of us. But we're in it together. We'll figure this out one step at a time." David looked at Sophie with understanding. "I don't expect anything from you right away. I just want a chance to make things right if you'll allow me. I'd like to be there for you, however you need me to be." Sophie nodded slowly, still unsure of what to think. I I don't know yet, but I guess it's good to know that you want to make up for the time you missed." She paused, then added, "I've always had my mom, and that's never going to change." Beth's heart swelled with pride. Sophie had always been her strong, independent girl. She would be okay, no matter what happened with David. But part of her still felt the weight of the unknown, wondering if David's presence in their lives would cause more complications or if it could truly be a positive change. As the conversation continued, David mentioned his wealth, his business, and the possibilities he could offer to Sophie. He talked about scholarships, travel, and opportunities in the world of technology, a field that Sophie had always been interested in. Sophie's eyes brightened a little, but there was still hesitation. "I've never wanted money or things like that," Sophie said softly. "I just want to know who I am and how you fit into my life." Beth squeezed Sophie's hand, nodding in agreement. "That's the most important thing. We don't need anything from him, except maybe the chance to get to know each other better." David smiled, his eyes full of emotion. "I'm not here to buy your love. I just want to show you that I can be part of your life if you'll let me." As they continued talking, Sophie seemed to warm up to David. She wasn't quite ready to call him Dad, but she appreciated his openness. She could see that he genuinely cared and was willing to take things slowly. After a while, Beth and Sophie agreed to meet with David again. It wasn't the end of their story with him, but it was a step forward. Sophie had opened herself up to the possibility, and Beth was proud of her daughter for being so brave. David offered to drive them home, but Beth declined, preferring to make their own way back. "Thank you for today," Beth said, shaking David's hand. "We'll take it from here." As they walked back to the car, Sophie spoke up. "Mom, I think I'm okay with meeting him again. It's going to take time, but I'm open to seeing what happens." Beth smiled, relieved that Sophie had found the strength to keep an open heart. "We'll take it one step at a time. Whatever happens, we're in this together." Little did they know, the days ahead would bring more surprises, more revelations, and challenges as they tried to blend their new family dynamics with the life they'd built together. But one thing was certain, they had each other, and that was enough. As they drove home, Sophie gazed out of the window, lost in her thoughts. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm, golden glow across the sky. She wasn't sure how to feel about David's sudden reappearance. On one hand, it was hard to ignore the opportunities he was offering, but on the other, she couldn't help but wonder if there were strings attached. Beth noticed her daughter's silence and broke the quiet. "Sophie, I know this is a lot to process. I just want you to remember that whatever happens, we'll always be a team." Sophie nodded, her voice soft. "I know, Mom. I'm just not sure what I'm supposed to feel." Beth smiled and reached over to give Sophie's hand a squeeze. "It's okay to be unsure. We're taking this slow, and you don't have to decide anything right now." Sophie turned to her mom, her heart swelling with love. "I just don't want things to change between us. You've been everything to me, and I'm scared that if I get to know him, it'll mess things up." Beth gently laughed, her voice comforting. "Sophie, nothing will change between us. You and I are a team. I've always been here for you, and I always will be. If David becomes a part of our lives, we'll figure it out together." Sophie smiled a little, grateful for her mother's support. But as much as she tried to push the thoughts of David out of her mind, she couldn't help but wonder, what if he really could help her with her future? What if this was her chance to break free from the limitations of her small town and pursue her dreams? But as soon as those thoughts entered her mind, doubt crept in again. Could she trust him? Would he really be there for her? Or was he just trying to make up for lost time? And how would this affect their little family? the one she had built with her mom over the years. That night, Sophie couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned, thinking about the meeting with David. The way he looked at her, the way he spoke about wanting to be part of her life, it all felt so surreal. She closed her eyes and imagined what it would be like to have a father figure in her life, someone who could provide for her and support her dreams. But what if that meant losing the connection she had with Beth? What if it meant her life wasn't hers anymore? The next morning, Sophie woke up feeling conflicted. The sun was shining through the window, but the weight of uncertainty still hung over her. She couldn't stop thinking about David's offer to help her pursue her dreams in technology. She had always loved learning about gadgets and computers, but the idea of suddenly getting help from a billionaire felt overwhelming. Beth, noticing Sophie's pensive mood, sat beside her at the breakfast table. "Hey, you okay? You didn't sleep much, did you?" Sophie sighed, feeling the tension in her chest. "I don't know, Mom. I feel like my whole world is changing, and I'm not sure if I'm ready for it." Beth smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair behind Sophie's ear. "Sweetheart, it's natural to feel that way. You don't have to make any big decisions right now. You have time." Sophie smiled, grateful for her mom's calm, reassuring presence. "I just don't want to disappoint you. I've always had you, and I don't want that to change." Beth hugged her tightly. "You could never disappoint me. And remember, no matter what happens, we are always a team. But you also deserve to follow your dreams, even if they lead you somewhere unexpected." Sophie hugged her mom back, feeling a little more at peace. She still didn't know what the future held, but she realized that whatever happened, she would always have her mom's support. And maybe, just maybe, she could find a way to open her heart to David without losing the life they had built together. As Sophie stood up from the table, she knew that she had to talk to David again. But this time, she would do it on her terms. She would listen to what he had to offer, but she wouldn't let it define her. She wasn't just Sophie, the daughter of a single mother. She was Sophie, a girl with dreams and the strength to make them come true, with or without David's help. Sophie spent the next few days thinking a lot about what her mom had said. She couldn't deny that David's offer sounded tempting, but she was also worried about the kind of life it might bring. It wasn't just about the money or the luxury. It was about who David was and what his intentions were. One evening, as she was finishing her homework, the doorbell rang. Sophie's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected David to come by again so soon, but there he was, standing on the porch with a warm smile. "Hey, Sophie," David greeted her. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." Sophie hesitated for a moment, unsure if she was ready to have another conversation with him. But then she realized that if she didn't talk to him now, she might never have the chance to truly understand what he was offering. So she stepped aside and let him in. "Mom's not here yet," Sophie said, leading him to the living room. "That's fine," David said. "I just wanted to talk to you about something. I know I've thrown a lot at you, and I want to make sure you're thinking this through carefully. It's a big decision." Sophie nodded, sitting down on the couch. "Yeah, it is. And I'm not sure what I should do. I've never had a lot of money, and the idea of suddenly having all of that, I don't know if it's good for me." David took a seat across from her, looking thoughtful. "I understand. I didn't want to pressure you into anything, but you deserve to live a life that makes you happy. I don't want to take away what you already have, but I do want to help you reach for more, if that's what you want." Sophie felt conflicted. Part of her wanted to reach out and take the offer. She knew how much her mom sacrificed to make sure Sophie had what she needed, and she had dreams that she could finally pursue with the right help. But another part of her worried that accepting David's help would change everything, including her relationship with Beth. "What do you want from me, David?" Sophie asked quietly. "I mean, what is all this really about?" David smiled kindly. "I know it sounds crazy, but I just want to be a part of your life. I've missed out on a lot of years, and I don't want to miss any more. But you're in control of what happens next. I'm not here to take anything away from you." Sophie looked into his eyes, trying to read him. For the first time, she felt like maybe David wasn't just doing this to make himself feel better. He seemed genuine, but the question still lingered in her mind. Was she ready to trust him? "I'm still not sure what I want, David," Sophie said, her voice soft. "I don't want things to change between me and my mom. She's been everything to me, and I can't risk losing that. David nodded slowly. I get that, and I would never want to come between you and your mom. But if you ever decide you want to take a chance on what I'm offering, I'll be here, and I'll respect whatever decision you make. Sophie felt a sense of relief. Maybe she didn't have to make a decision right away. Maybe she could take her time, talk to her mom, and really think about what this meant for her future. Thanks, David, Sophie said, standing up. I appreciate you being so understanding. David smiled warmly, standing up as well. Of course, Sophie. No matter what you decide, I'll be proud of you. As David left, Sophie sat down on the couch, feeling the weight of the decision on her shoulders. She had a lot to think about, but for the first time, she felt like she had some control over her future. That night after dinner, Sophie and her mom sat down together in the living room. Sophie couldn't hold back any longer. She needed to talk to her mom about David and the life-changing decision she had in front of her. Mom, I talked to David, Sophie said nervously. Beth looked up from her book, her expression soft. And? How did it go? Sophie took a deep breath. He wants to help me follow my dreams, and he's offering a lot. But I'm scared, Mom. I don't want to lose everything we've worked for. And I'm not sure I can trust him. Beth nodded thoughtfully, setting the book aside. I understand, honey. I've thought about it too. But I know you've always had big dreams, and I want you to follow them. However, if you decide to go this route, we'll do it together. And if you don't, that's okay too. Your happiness is what matters most. Sophie felt a wave of comfort wash over her. Her mom always knew how to make her feel supported. Thanks, Mom. I just don't want to mess up anything with us. Beth smiled warmly. You won't. Whatever happens, we're in this together. Sophie smiled back, feeling a little less overwhelmed. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she felt like she could face it, no matter which path she chose. The days passed, and Sophie thought about David's offer more than ever. She spent time with her mom, thinking about the future and the life she wanted. One evening, as they sat in the living room together, Sophie knew it was time to make her decision. Mom, Sophie began, I've thought a lot about what David said, and I think I'm ready to take a chance. I want to follow my dreams, and I think David's offer could really help me do that. Beth looked at Sophie with a proud smile. I'm so proud of you, honey. Whatever path you take, I'll always support you. The next morning, Sophie called David to let him know her decision. I'm ready, David, Sophie said. I want to take a chance and see where this can take me, but I want to do it with you as a mentor, not just someone who gives me money. David was thrilled, his voice full of excitement. You've made the right choice, Sophie, and I promise I'll be here to guide you, not control you. Together, we'll make sure you get everything you deserve. Sophie's heart raced with excitement as she hung up the phone. She felt like a door had opened for her, and with her mom's support and David's guidance, she could finally take steps toward her dreams. Months passed, and Sophie worked hard on the project she'd always dreamed of. With David's mentorship, she built connections in the tech world and launched her own company. It wasn't easy, but Sophie's determination and hard work paid off. She proved to herself and everyone around her that she was capable of anything. Years later, Sophie stood in front of a room full of investors, presenting her company's groundbreaking tech products. As the crowd applauded, Sophie couldn't help but feel proud. She'd come a long way from that uncertain girl with big dreams. And through it all, her mom was by her side every step of the way. Sophie had found success, but she had never forgotten what truly mattered: her family, her values, and the strength that had carried her through. David, the man who had once knocked on her door with an offer she couldn't have imagined, had become more than just a mentor. He had become a friend, a part of her journey, and someone who believed in her long before she truly believed in herself. Sophie had learned that success wasn't just about money or fame. It was about staying true to who you are and never giving up on your dreams. Thank you for joining us on this Heartline journey. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heartwarming stories. The moral? Your dreams are within reach if you believe in yourself and take that first step.